Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive with us.
Always happy to be back.
Today we're looking at something that I think is really interesting, is how our past experiences and particularly unresolved hurts can kind of sneakily influence how we react to stuff happening around us.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I think we've all had those moments where, you have this reaction to something and you're like, whoa, that felt way bigger than it needed to be.
Totally. Yeah, it's like a small thing happens and suddenly it's like this huge wave of emotion and you're kind of left wondering, where did that come from?
Exactly. And I think understanding that link between our past and how we react in the present can be so helpful.
Absolutely. And to kind of dig into this a bit more, we've been checking out this YouTube discussion by Amina.
Ayana's work is always so insightful.
It really is. And, just for anyone who's not familiar, it's I-N-A and it's pronounced Ina. And her channel is called O and Nina, which translates to healing space in Ina. So you kind of get a sense of what her content is all about.
It's all about how our experiences shape our well-being.
Exactly. And in this particular discussion, she talks about something that I found really fascinating. This idea that when we go through something painful emotionally and we don't fully process it, it can kind of get stuck inside us.
Yeah, almost like a memory that's still active in a way.
Right. And then later on, something seemingly unrelated can happen in the present, and it can tap into that old pain without us even realizing it.
Exactly. And it's like, boom, suddenly you're having this big reaction and you don't even know why.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit more. Our mission in this deep dive today is to understand how these past hurts can act like hidden landmines.
Landmines.
Yeah, I know it's a kind of strong image, but stick with me here.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So obviously when we think of landmines, we think of the literal definition, right? A bomb buried in the ground that explodes if someone steps on it or a vehicle drives over it. But in this case, we're not talking about physical explosives.
Right, we're talking about something more emotional.
Exactly. These are more like sensitive spots within us. And maybe a better way to think about it is imagine you had a bad sunburn a while ago.
Okay, I can picture that.
So even though your skin looks healed, it's still way more sensitive to the sun than the rest of your skin.
Right.
And these emotional landmines are kind of similar. They're created from these past experiences where we felt a lot of pain. Maybe it was rejection, maybe betrayal, maybe feeling unheard or unseen, just like these big emotions that for whatever reason we didn't fully work through at the time.
So they kind of stay with us?
Exactly. And then fast forward to the present, something happens. Maybe someone makes a comment that feels dismissive, or you're in a situation that reminds you of a past failure, even in a small way, and boom, suddenly this intense emotional reaction flares up.
And it feels like it came out of nowhere.
Right, and it might feel totally out of proportion to what just happened, or you might even find yourself thinking, why did that bother me so much?
Yeah, I've definitely been there.
And what's really interesting is that present-day trigger often has some connection, even if it's a subtle one, to that original hurt.
So even if we don't consciously realize it, there's a link.
Exactly. It could be a similar feeling or a similar dynamic in the relationship, or even just a certain tone of voice or facial expression that your subconscious mind links back to that earlier pain.
It's like our internal system has learned to be on high alert in certain areas because of what we've gone through.
Right. So when something even vaguely similar happens, it's like all the alarm bells go off and we react defensively. And sometimes looking back, we realize our reaction didn't really fit the situation.
Oh, yeah. I think we've all had those moments where we're like, oh, maybe I overreacted a little bit there.
Totally. And this is where the potential to unintentionally hurt others comes in.
Because we're reacting from this place of unhealed pain.
Exactly. Our response is colored by the intensity of that past wound rather than what's actually happening in the present moment. It's like we're seeing the present through this lens tinted by the past.
Okay. I like that analogy, the tinted lens.
So think about it. Let's say someone you care about is running a little late and they don't text. Now, if you have a past wound around feeling abandoned or unimportant, your reaction might be to immediately jump to anger or to shut down, even though they might just be stuck in traffic.
Right. They didn't mean to trigger you.
Exactly. They just happen to step on one of your buried emotional landmines without even realizing it.
And that's why understanding this stuff is so important, because it helps us to see that sometimes those really intense reactions aren't really about the other person at all.
Right. It's more about us and what we're bringing to the situation from our past.
Exactly. And Ina actually talks about this in her discussion, which we can understand as these deeply ingrained emotional habits or tendencies.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And she's saying that these aren't necessarily part of who we are at our core, but rather these learned patterns of reacting that have become automatic because of what we've experienced.
Like our default mode kicks in.
Exactly. And our minds and bodies have learned to associate certain situations or cues with past pain. And so they develop these automatic reactions as a way to try to protect us from feeling that pain again.
So it's like a defense mechanism.
Right. But the
Yeah.
problem is that these defense mechanisms, while they might have been helpful in the original situation, can become really unhelpful in the present if we're not aware of where they're coming from.
Because we're not actually in that same situation anymore.
Exactly. We might be reacting to a perceived threat rather than an actual threat.
And this is where it gets really interesting because Ina encourages us to explore and, if possible, gently address and process these past influences. She talks about practices aimed at which translates to eliminating past karmic connections and karma.
Okay, so that might sound a little out there for some people.
Yeah, it can sound a bit abstract, I know, but I think the underlying idea is something we can all relate to, this idea that bringing awareness to these past burdens can actually lighten our emotional load in the present.
Absolutely. And whether or not you connect with the specific terminology, I think the core principle is about understanding the roots of our strong reactions.
Mm.
When we start to see that connection between a present-day overreaction and a past experience, we begin to gain more control over how we respond.
It's like we're starting to diffuse those hidden landmines.
I like that.
Once we understand where they are and why they were planted there, they start to lose some of their power to explode unexpectedly, and we can start to respond to what's actually happening in the present moment, rather than reacting through the filter of past pain.
And what's really important to remember here is that often the person who caused the original hurt may no longer even be in our lives, or they might not even be aware of the lasting impact of their actions.
So we're the ones carrying that weight.
Exactly. And it's like we're holding on to this pain that's not actually serving us anymore.
Yeah. And that brings us to this really important idea of self-compassion, recognizing that these strong reactions might not be a reflection of who we are now, but rather echoes of past experiences, allows us to approach ourselves with more understanding and kindness.
It's about giving ourselves a break.
Exactly. Instead of getting frustrated with ourselves for overreacting, we can start to see it as a signal that something might need a little gentle attention, and that's where the healing can begin.
And that self-awareness is truly the first crucial step towards healing. Just by observing our reactions, especially ones that feel a bit out of proportion,
Yeah.
and asking ourselves, why did that trigger such a strong response in me? We can begin to uncover the underlying wounds that might still need some care.
It's like we're becoming detectives of our own emotional landscape.
I love that. And Ayanna also touches on this idea that many of us are striving to grow and become the best version of ourselves.
Right.
And she's saying that being weighed down by these past hurts can actually hinder that growth. It's like we're carrying around all this extra baggage.
It's exhausting.
Exactly. And she suggests that letting go of that old pain allows us to step more fully and freely into our present lives.
So it's not about forgetting what happened, but about processing the emotions associated with those experiences in a healthy way.
Right. So they no longer have this power over us.
Okay, so what does all of this mean for you, our listener?
Yeah.
It means that those seemingly out of proportion reactions you sometimes have might not be about the current situation at all. They could be valuable signals pointing to an older wound that hasn't fully healed.
Exactly. And recognizing this can be the first step toward understanding yourself on a deeper level.
Then preventing those unintentional emotional explosions that can sometimes affect those around you.
So here's a question for you. Have you ever noticed any recurring emotional reactions in your own life that feel particularly intense or just don't quite fit the situation?
It might be helpful to start paying attention to those patterns, just notice them without any judgment.
And remember, even a little bit of curiosity can be a powerful starting point.
So to bring it all together, the key takeaway here is this unprocessed emotional pain from past experiences can act like hidden triggers, those emotional landmines we talked about. And when these get stepped on by seemingly small events in the present, they can lead to strong reactions that might unintentionally harm others.
But the good news is that becoming aware of these potential hidden wounds and taking steps to understand and heal them can lead to greater self-awareness and more mindful interactions.
And as Ina encourages, exploring and working through these past burdens offers a really hopeful path towards greater emotional freedom and a more authentic way of being in the present.
And remember, she has other content related to understanding and clearing past influences, which might be worth checking out if this topic resonated with you.
Okay, so for our final thought today, we invite you to reflect on any recurring strong emotional reactions you might experience.
Could these be echoes of unresolved experiences?
And what small step might you be willing to take to gently explore these areas for yourself?
It's an invitation to become more aware of the invisible forces that might be shaping your responses.
And to consider the possibility of greater emotional peace and clearer connections with those around you.
So thank you so much for joining us for another deep dive.
We hope you found it insightful, and we'll be back again soon with another exploration. Until then, take care.
See you next time.
Sitting by the river, whispers tell me take the dive. Fingers pluck the strings, my spirit starts to jive.